It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. How are you? Welcome to our micro talk show. I mean micro. It's micro. I mean, not trying to brag. That's how micro it is. It's so very micro. It's a talk show, my micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAX. And if you're neither of those, then the ALLs, all the rest of you. You know who you are. We come here every day, 2 p.m. Pacific, live, just to talk. Just to talk about the news, to talk about the things that are important, to get it off my chest, get it off our chest. You may chat if you're in the Facebook venues where this show is on. You can chat back at me. You can chat back at me on YouTube if you're there. Or if you're catching this on the recording, then you can just wistfully think, oh, if I were only there live, I can interact with Emil. But no, you can just like use your finger and fast forward me, which sometimes people think is far more rewarding. But we're here. This is a Friday. You can tell people are saying, that 4-day weekend idea or that 3-day weekend and the 4-day work week idea. I mean, people are yearning for that, but there's stuff to discuss today. There is stuff to discuss today. I want to talk about on this program. This is the 50th year after martial law was declared in the Philippines. Of course, it has since been forgotten. It's over, right? It's now historical martial law, but the impact of martial law remains. And what makes it more important 50 years after martial law is that the son of Ferdinand Marcos, the dictator, is the president of the Philippines, which does not make sense, but it happened. It happened in a democracy that is really, the Philippines is a mirror image of American democracy. It was set up that way. And wouldn't you know, 50 years after Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law, since the EDSA revolution and the People Power Revolution and Cory Aquino, and now 50 years after, here is Marcos's son, the president of the Philippines. He was in America. He was in the U.S. He was at the UN, and there were dozens of people out there protesting the presence of Marcos and marking this event 50 years after martial, because it was not benign, right? Martial law was a significant thing, but like everything else in history, it goes through this revision and people try to forget, and people don't recall the numbers, which are significant. The number of people who were victims of martial law. I mean, significant. And New York Times did a big takeout with pictures of people who are activists, many in their late 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, martial law ruled martial law was declared in 72, but Ferdinand Marcos ruled from 1965. Here's his record. It's almost like a baseball stats. Although that would be if it were benign, but this is not benign. 70,000 people imprisoned, 34,000 people tortured, 3,240 people killed. This is from Amnesty International. And yet, when the chance was there, I mean, and there, since the People Power Revolution and Cory Aquino, there has been a move toward justice to get money that the Marcoses plundered and to get some kind of justice for the people who were victimized by martial law. And then that all was turned on its head when Rodrigo Duterte became president. I mean, there were a number of people before Duterte, but Duterte was almost like the second coming of Marcos with his extrajudicial killings and his own set of human rights violations. And now we have a kind of political marriage with Duterte, who could not run again, but his daughter ran. She's vice president. Marcos's son, Bong Bong, Ferdinand Jr., is president. And they are the non-dynamic duo that foster all these bad memories about martial law, human rights violations, present and past and present. Sarah Duterte, just her link to her father, who is the new, or now past, but was the modern Filipino strongman, which was, for the time being, I mean, when Trump was president here in the United States, and there's Putin, of course, in Russia, the strongman, that's what people said they wanted throughout the world. It's the emergence of the strongman, which is so totally antithetical to anything that you might think would be, uttered in 2022, especially after 1989, when you saw a swing against repressive regimes, against anti-democratic notions, and you saw a swing to democracy. 1989. Remember that? Fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of Ceausescu in Romania, the end of the Soviet Empire, ultimately, from those moments in 1989. The protesters in Tiananmen Square, well, that somewhat faltered. And now Beijing now has the upper hand there. Strongman back in power, or back in fashion, except here in the U.S., where Biden was elected. I know the strongman think that was a stolen election. That's the big lie. And now we have the midterms, where we will see democracy put to the test, and we'll see how people feel about democracy at the ballot box. All this is happening as Russia, right, is trying to figure out a way to not lose face after losing so much ground in Ukraine. They're having an election in the areas they still control in Ukraine, busing in people, essentially having people vote in sham elections. It's funny how these things are all existing, and if you just notice them happening, it's hard not to shake your head and wonder what's happening in this world. Putin, saber rattle. We talked about that in yesterday's show after his comments the other day, and we saw Biden's response. We saw Blinken's response at the UN, and we're seeing the people's response in Russia. We had that interview that we replayed, Nadia from Pussy Riot, yesterday. People yearning to be free. There's that sentiment, that same sentiment from 1989. It didn't die. It's still here. And we have to listen to that, honor that, and cherish what we have here in America, the freedom that we have here. Joe Biden was at the DNC headquarters today talking to some NEA folks, National Education Association folks, essentially saying democracy is on the ballot and also hyping up the power of women. Women are going to, he said, they're going to make their voices heard. They're going to speak out against, the overturn of abortion. They're going to speak out. Women's rights. The Republicans won't know what hit them. Joe Biden being optimistic. So there was Biden out there talking about the midterm. We're less than 2 months away, right? And then you had Kevin McCarthy in Pittsburgh kicking things off for the Republicans and sort of letting or unveiling the Republican mindset. And it's all going to be about, he didn't mention abortion. He didn't even mention Trump. He didn't even mention MAGA. He didn't mention democracy. Isn't it funny? The Republicans are running away from all these issues that, in general, are really negative. But to a core base of Republicans, it still resonates. But in general, it sounds like the Republicans want to switch away from Trump. They're addicted. They're addicted to Trump. It's the only way they can win. But it also, unfortunately, for them, it may well be the only way they can lose if they keep hanging on to Trump. So I thought it was interesting watching Kevin McCarthy, the Californian, there speaking in Pennsylvania. I think he was in Monongahela County. I think that's where Joe Montana, the San Francisco 49er quarterback's from. And like I said, didn't talk about abortion, didn't talk about Trump, but he talked about fentanyl because it looks like the Republicans are going to run on this law and order anti-drug thing. And Kevin McCarthy said something like 300 people die of fentanyl each day in America. That's like one airplane. If an airplane fell from the skies, that would be big news. God. I thought I was the guy who liked the airplane analogy. I use it with COVID. 450, that's 2.5 airplanes. Kevin McCarthy said, 300 fentanyl deaths. Look, fentanyl, that's a big deal. I don't want to make fun of fentanyl. It's just that for the election, for the midterms, coming up less than 2 months, that's what Kevin McCarthy at this kickoff, the RNC kickoff, is telling people. This is what the RNC is going to, these are the main points. Crime, anti-drugs, anti-fentanyl. They're not talking about abortion. They're not talking about Donald Trump. They're not talking about Mar-a-Lago and the documents and the Espionage Act that Donald Trump appears to be in violation of. They're not talking about the New York State Attorney General suit, which appears to threaten the business of the man who calls himself a businessman, right? This is the thing about people who are in business, who when they go into politics, They have no sense of governing. They have no sense of any of that. I mean, all they know is profit. And if all they know is profit, then they don't know how to govern. Because profit is not about people. Profit is bottom line. Profit is money. Profit is cash money. Government is not about profit. Government is about the people. That's why business people should not, unless they're ready to make a major shift, they should not be in government. Anyway, so Kevin McCarthy is sort of letting people know, hey, we're going to talk about drugs. We're going to talk about crime. We're going to talk about fentanyl. And isn't it funny? This is the guy who has switched several times from hate Trump, love Trump, hate Trump, love. I guess now he hates Trump. I guess. Kevin McCarthy. And all this, you know, as the election ramps up, we have the economy falling. Is this a good? Now, this is where people usually say, oh, this is why we need a business person. No, we don't need a business person here. We don't need a business person. When times get tough, you need a people person, because a people person will know how to put things in perspective. And we usually come out of these things. Look, I've lived through several recessions. My whole career, my resume is like the history of recession. Oh, Emil's working? Oh, great. No recession. Oh, Emil's not working? Oh, must be a recession. My whole career is built on that. And of course, if you're looking at the paper today, all the different papers, well, if you're looking at the news right now, oh my God, you know, stock market the worst, people talking about not just inflation, they're talking about possible recession. You got this guy in Bloomberg who is known as Dr. Doom, right? Nouriel Roubini, NYU professor. He said a recession is likely to hit the U.S. by the end of 2022 before spreading globally next year, conceivably lasting for the entirety of 2023, said Roubini in Bloomberg. He says it's not going to be a short and shallow recession. It's going to be severe, long, and ugly. I don't know. I lived through 2008. That was pretty long. That was pretty ugly. And we managed. What you need is time, and you need leadership that understands that it's not about business, it's about people. And you need people to understand that you can weather it. But I mean, there are all sorts of economic signs that are not good, like the interest rates. If you're buying a home or selling a home, interest rates were like 3.5%, like in January. Now they're like 6.3%, something like that. They're more than doubled. So sellers of homes, they don't mind. If you're a buyer, that's a problem. And if sellers have to buy a home after they sell their home, they've got to face these high interest rates, and they're selling when they have a low interest rate. It's going to stymie the home market. Most people in California who are hurt by the recession were hurt by having their housing prices fall, and they were underwater on their houses. And that was really a symptom of the credit debt swaps and the bank lending, how banks were lending money to people who weren't qualified. If you spend within your limits, we can survive. I mean, look, what bailed us out of that, by the way, was Barack Obama. Government thinking about the people, but I think there was some equal. I think the banks also benefited too. Well, banks definitely were bailed out by the recession. But I know one provision that I think people don't think about is when you were underwater and they had that home affordability mortgage program. It was called HAMP. HAMP was the acronym. That was Obama. That saved a lot of people who were underwater in the big recession. So hang tight. We'll weather this. And I think if we have the right person at the helm, I think we'll weather it better than the second coming of the former president of the United States. All right, coming up on the show, like I said, we're going to talk about Marcos 50 years after. We're going to talk about this new, there's a new report out that Asian American, or not Asian American, Asian professors in the United States thinking about bailing out because of the scrutiny that they've been given. People thinking they're spies. We talked about Franklin Tao's case yesterday. Now, 4 in 10 scientists at major universities are thinking twice about either coming here or staying here. So we'll talk about that. Lots to get into. And then, of course, Trump, his troubles. I saw an exhibit, Carlos Villa, at the Asian Art Museum. Talk about that. And I want to bring up our next guest because he can talk about all these things. Good friend of mine, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, emeritus, professor emeritus, Filipino American Studies, Asian American Studies, man about town, and hopefully his internet is working today. It's Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
How are you?
Thanks for having me on. It's been
Well,
a while. Good to
I
see
had
you.
I just imagine you were probably out there with the Queen. Were you at the Queen's funeral? Is that it? Is that why you weren't with me?
Uh, no.
Okay, all right. You don't have to go
I
in.
didn't really care that much. There are some Brit Filipinos, and I saw while people were in the crowd honoring the Queen, particularly when she was lying in state,
Uh,
there were a lot of Filipino looking people.
oh yeah. Look, when I went to London a couple times and I like walk around, I was astonished by all the Filipinos I saw. Usually in service jobs, but some in professional jobs. And now you have some younger Filipinos in their 20s and 30s attending colleges, doing well in British society. They're there.
How did you determine that they were Pinoy? I mean, we can't just go on appearance, right?
I would go up to them and then say, "Oh, hey, hey, hey,
Pinoy ka ba?
yeah." No, they were really happy in their.
That they were both recognized
Oh
and
yeah,
greeted?
they were in their. They had their uniform on. They were doormen, and they were working. They were working. I think we went to go have tea somewhere, and there they were. There were just a bunch of Filipinos. Anyway, the other reason why I wanted to bring you on was today, especially. This is the 50th year after martial law.
Woohoo! That's right. September 22nd was yesterday.
21st, 21st,
Right.
21st,
Okay.
21st was the 50th day. But my I have my spies at the UN and
Okay.
outside New York, and there were
All of
protesters.
my former intelligence from the UN are either retired or passed.
Yeah.
So that shows my age. But anyway, good, good. You still have contacts.
Well, no, I didn't say my contacts were at the UN inside.
Oh,
My contacts were outside the UN, probably holding up a coffee and looking at all the protesters who were there.
okay.
There were a lot of Filipino American Filipino protesters protesting. Bong Bong was at the UN,
Yes.
and they were all holding up placards of the victims.
Yeah, the people who had
Of,
been salvaged, their families. Yeah.
yeah, and one of them, I got a pretty good photograph from my people on the outside. Joaquin Rosas. Do you know Joaquin Rosas?
I do not. It does not ring a bell.
Joaquin Rosas, known as Chino, was an older. Right?
Okay, I got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. He was the owner and publisher of the Manila Times, the Daily Mirror, uh, Taliba, and the Weekly Women's Magazine. He owned a radio station, a television station, and
That,
he,
that did it get? They all get suspended by what's his name?
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he was. I saw his picture amongst the people. He actually died of cancer um, when he was 75 in 1988. Um, but let's say, according to a bio in the official Human Rights Violations Victims Memorial Commission, it,
Whoa.
yeah, I mean, he it was Rosas who convinced Cory Aquino to run for president by pledging to collect 1 million signatures. So anyway, he according to this bio, also he, let's see, it just said that he was the owner of those big publications, and he
Hmm.
was. I saw his picture being held up by one of
So,
the
how was he
protesters.
treated?
So tell me, the human rights.
How was he treated by the Marcos administration? Was he actually imprisoned or just forced into exile?
It says he, this biography I'm seeing does not. Oh yeah, when Marcos declared martial law in '72, Rosas was among the first who was ordered arrested and detained, and he was jailed 2 more times after that, but refused to give up. He, despite advanced age and failing health, he led rallies, faced water cannons and tear gas, and he was one of the first to convince Cory Aquino to run against Marcos. So he was arrested. It doesn't say he was brutalized, but I just know that I wanted to mention because my my eyes and ears who were in New York had a picture of his likeness of a person, a protester holding his picture. There are other people who are detained. New York Times did a big thing about people who are mourning their loved ones. So, what do we make after 50 years of martial law? And we have Bong Bong, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., as well as Sarah Duterte as vice president, but we have Bong Bong
Have you
as
gotten
president.
questions from non Filipinos on why it's possible
No,
for
you know, so,
Junior to gain the presidency?
some people have asked, but not. No, I have not. I can't say I've gotten a lot of questions from listeners on that.
I got
What?
a couple of neighbors who asked,
Yeah.
and one in particular had watched the Asian American 5-part series,
Mm.
and so he he said, "Well, you were active during that period. It was obvious from that from that history. So, what were you doing?" And I told him that I was among the protesters and all the rest of that stuff that were doing anti-Marcos activity. Well, and I explained to him they did an excellent job of using the media to not just rehabilitate Marcos, but to undo all of the negative elements of their history and only present the positive. And I said the proof of that is that they're teaching this at all school levels.
In the
They're,
Philippines.
yes, in the Philippines. They're teaching this in the Philippines at all school levels. And some teachers in the Philippines who are critical of the process, this educational process, put up video of kids reciting why they thought that the Daddy Marcos, that Ferdinand himself was such a great president.
He built
And
the roads. He built the infrastructure of the Philippines, right?
yeah,
That's usually what I hear.
yeah, they didn't cite the some of the gamier stuff like the Miss Universe contests and
Oh yeah.
the Thriller in Manila and the chess game. It would be interesting to interview Kasparov, right, and see what he thinks, at this point.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway,
yeah. Well, he's political, and
very,
yeah.
very. He's been outright critical. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a target on him.
Well, I'm just surprised that uh, Bong Bong's ability to rise. I think his ability to rise was that, well, he managed to separate himself from the family and continue off as governor of. He was governor of Ilocos Norte. He was a politician throughout the Philippines, and it's not like he's Teflon, but nothing stuck. And then, of course, he was aided by Duterte, right? If it was not Duterte, this wouldn't happen, right?
Well, yeah, I think I don't know. I think even if it weren't Duterte, they were doing such a good job, as I said, of completely remaking the Marcos history in a positivist fashion, right?
Yeah.
That he might have been able to, if not now, in a future election, get elected. Whether or not Duterte assisted, Duterte definitely helped. There's no question that he helped. And I remember. Do you remember when there was all the protests of returning McCoy's body
Oh yeah,
to the Philippines?
returning it to the Philippines from Hawaii.
Yeah, and then the burial and all that stuff,
I remember certainly the burial.
and there were a lot of protests against that. But it wasn't. It was the protests were neither that large, and nor were they long lasting.
Yeah.
And
You
that was pretty much, so even before Duterte said more about the Marcos regime, more positive things about the Marcos regime, you could tell that the public was already soft on Marcos. You
yeah,
know,
right. They had were ready to forgive. Is that just a function of the colonial Spain, or
or Catholicism.
or is it a matter of, hey, we don't care? It's not important. I mean, there are some people who who really feel the connection to government and the importance of government, and there's some people who for whom it's just hard enough to survive. It's a struggle just to survive.
There it is. I think you put your finger on it. I think for a large, if not a majority, of Filipinos,
Mm,
they don't have much faith in government because at the local level, their experience is of corruption.
right.
Their immediate experience is more related to experiences of corruption. That's an accepted element of Philippine government culture, political culture. I witnessed it. I was there
Yeah.
while Marcos was running for president against Macapagal.
Yeah.
And just coincidentally, I was there. I was only 16, but I was very interested in political processes. And because the U.S. was going through, of course, the civil rights movement at its apex, and the anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, growing at
Mm,
the time. So we were living in a very politicized environment here in the United States, and it was a global, very how can I put it, a very dynamic global situation with wars going on all over the place. With U.S. Clandestine activity
yeah.
going on especially in Central America and South America. The Middle East. So things were happening.
So the Philippines, and look, the United States support. There was
Yeah, they did.
That I mean that's really the big helper. It wasn't what Duterte did later in 2022, but the U.S. was a
What
major
Ronald
supporter of
Reagan did.
Marcos
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
throughout
I mean,
throughout
when
martial
Marcos knew he
law.
was in trouble, well, when Marcos knew he was in trouble, when the world was criticizing Marcos, right? I mean, everybody was criticizing after about 1979, 1980, 81, right? The criticism of Marcos was reaching an apex. And so the question was, how much longer could he hold on? And then with the assassination of Benigno Aquino, that really accelerated everything, right?
Yeah,
But
Aquino was assassinated in '83, but
that's right.
I just want to point out that all this time that Marcos was a bad guy from '72 on,
Yeah,
the U.S. was behind him.
yeah, they were supporting him. I was even when after Aquino was assassinated and it was clear that things were going to turn against him and possibly elements of the military, right, and definitely elements of the political culture of the political elite. But the first thing he did was stick his head up and look to Washington D.C. and he got quiet support from the Reagan administration.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and remember Bush, Vice President, then Vice
sure,
President Bush, he said something to the effect of we honor you for your adherence to democratic values.
right.
Wait, I mean, you can look it up and get the exact phrase,
Oh yeah, you could get the exact quote. Well,
but
even on a local level, Di-Fi embraced him.
yeah,
She went to the Philippines. I advised some of her advisors that were in her office at the time, including the Filipino advisors
yeah,
that but I won't mention their names. I think all or most of them have passed
yeah.
by now, even though the younger of them was my age. Anyway, I don't want to give away who that person was, but I said no, she shouldn't participate. And then they when the Marcoses came here,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Di-Fi threw a big welcoming party
Yeah.
and embraced them. And I said, it probably won't affect Di-Fi because she was gaining in popularity and she would run for senator and, of course, hold that position until the present moment.
Yeah. Well, that was a funny thing. I mean, I was working at the NBC affiliate at the time, and I remember the big visit of Marcos. I think it was in the '80s, early
Oh,
'80s.
yeah. Yeah.
And remember, he went to the St. Francis
Yeah.
and huge demonstration there. I think it had to happen around the same time that the Queen was visiting in 1983. Not at the same time, but like in that same
Yeah,
era,
same period. Yes.
because Marcos had come, all the dignitaries were coming, the Queen was visiting, and it was 1983 that Aquino, Benigno Aquino, was in exile still in the United States, and then
Right.
'83 he went back to Manila and was assassinated.
Right.
And that was kind of like the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
It
I
it
think the beginning of the end was when he started showing, he was trying to show a softer version of martial law. Remember when he declared, I think it was in 80 or 81, that martial law was lifted. But what the reason he could afford to do that was because the Con had happened, the Constitutional Convention had happened, and it imbued the president and local authorities, governors and mayors, with greater police power. So, he didn't have to have martial law. He just had to have politics on his side, right? Because the police power was increased.
well,
Okay.
well, well, that's the thing. He sort of shared some of that might, some of that power, and with the locals, and so they went along with them. But it still
Sure.
was that's sort of like a source of corruption, a source of well, it was a way to he had a way to wield that power against dissent, against people who spoke out against him.
Do you think it's time for people to do you think it's worthwhile for Filipino Americans like ourselves
Hmm.
to tell the reality of that history at this time?
Oh yeah.
Do you think it's worth it? Because I mean, people are giving Bong Bong a chance, right? And
Well,
he met with the president yesterday, right?
yeah. I
Biden.
I I didn't see that. Did he met in I know
Yeah,
that, but Biden's off to other things, and it was, there were the key moments at the UN, when Biden spoke, and then
that was a pretty good speech, I thought.
yeah, I did too, and then Blinken. I thought Blinken was effective, being the heavy,
Yeah,
very soft spoken but diplomatic. But we are in that tense period where Putin says, I'm not bluffing, and he probably is, but he's not. But here's the strong
he
man.
might be a chess player, but he ain't a poker player.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing you're going to do is get out there and say, "I'm not bluffing. This is not a bluff." Okay, 'cause that's going to cause everybody to question, whether or not you've got the gonads. Do you really have the gonads to push a button?
Well, look, he is now the world. The strong man of the world, the villainous strong man, and
Right.
we were talking about all the leaders who are strongmen. He was meeting with China with Xi the other a couple weeks ago, and you have all these examples of strongman leadership, and then here's Bong Bong, who I think people are giving him a pass because even though he's a Marcos, he doesn't appear to be uh, as
He's not as strident. He's not as pompous
yeah,
or strident, and so you can put people who liked the way Marcos acted would see him as a weaker version, perhaps.
yeah.
But you don't know. I mean, is it fair for us to visit all of the sins of the father, or
Well,
even his own sins? Remember when the Marcos family did "We Are the World"? They sang "We Are the World" in the midst of increasing poverty and
yeah, yeah.
the
Well,
Philippines falling apart, and they sang it as as a spoof.
oh, they were spoofing. They weren't being earnest.
No,
That would be
no, not if you see the video. You don't see a whole lot of earnest.
yeah. Well. Here's the thing. I think people are giving Bong Bong a pass because he doesn't appear to. I mean, he's not jailing people left and right. He's not killing people
Yet.
yet. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
but but
yeah, but one of the first things he did was he got rid of the PACC, not a PAGG, but the PACC, right?
yeah,
Corruption, the anti-corruption group, right? He got yeah,
yeah. He's sort of getting the bureaucracy to his liking,
that's right. He's
and
restructuring. Yeah,
and people are they're courting him. They're trying to placate him. They're being not quite sycophantic, but they know that he's the guy in charge. It's just sad. I To get back to your original question, I think yes, people should say the truth about what
that's right.
happened during that time. I mean, I we can talk about what happened during the Marcos time here in America, because we know how it split the community, how Americans were divided. If you were a Reaganite or a Republican, you usually just went along with, oh well, the Philippines are our little brown brother, right? Um,
Right,
and yet there were people on the left, people progressives, mostly, and some Democrats who were very vehemently against Marcos, protesting him at every turn, um, protesting here, protesting in the Philippines, burning Uncle Sam in effigy. I mean,
right,
it
right.
it was it was a time when people knew about the Philippines, and I have to say that when Marcos was ousted, it was a great cause for celebration, people power, and all that. But uh, when
Well,
Corey,
but there was also a belief that there was going to be structural change in the Philippines. That
right,
that,
right,
that ousting Marcos was going to lead to political and social change. of substantive
Yeah.
impact,
and,
right?
and and that was my point, that even though Cory Aquino, people power came in and she ruled, but not much really changed, and there was a kind of disappointment. And for a while, the Philippines just wasn't as relevant anymore
Yep,
without
yep,
without the image of a strongman beating down on the Filipino people. And um, certainly the leaders, subsequent leaders, they had different things that made them notable, like Estrada, Irap, or Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who, um, I guess, what corruption sort of brought her down.
right,
And also, um, she did have some. She did have the Philippines in the spotlight when. Remember when George W. Bush asked for the alliance to come back to back him up, and
right.
who backed him up? The Philippines. We're
Yeah.
gonna go in there. We're gonna back up.
Did you go to her visit? Her, and
I did. I
yeah,
did go to her visit. She had a big celebration or big community.
welcome. Yeah. Did you go to SI? Were you at the church as well?
I wasn't at the. I was just at one of the big things. But now this is real deep San Francisco Filipino American history.
That's right. We
Listen,
got to put on our Asian American hat again, man. We're getting too deep in the Filipino stuff.
no, it's good because those were important markers for the community. Because I think
Absolutely.
I think the community was trying to figure out, well, where are we now? Because as you know, the the Filipino American community is kind of bi-coastal in a way, right? The
Yeah,
Filipinos
that's pretty good.
Filipinos who come here. When I mean bi-coastal, I don't mean East Coast, West Coast. I mean West Coast and the Philippines,
Right,
and
right.
yeah, and that's been somewhat curtailed with COVID. But I guess can people fly into the Philippines now?
Yeah, it's binational. It really is binational. I'm sure you're familiar with the term that's been bandied about in academia in the last 15, 20 years. That's transnationalism.
Oh no,
Oh, okay.
so
Well, what it initially described was how people came from a foreign country to the United States, and they brought with them certain national characteristics, cultural characteristics. But it also started to look at, in a multidisciplinary manner, not just culture, but business and politics
yeah,
and political behavior. And so over time, and for me, transnationalism, when the word first came out, I thought that's just another word for something. That's another name for something, a phenomenon that has been going on for 80 years, right? Because the elite of the Philippines, like the elite of
right,
many other, yeah, they've been going back and forth. They have businesses in both places.
yeah,
They have influences in both places, even though the greater degree of power that they might wield is in the Philippines. They also have great influence here in the United States among Filipino Americans, and they have relationships with people in the political elite, the American political elite,
yeah.
and across the board, particularly with the white political elite, right?
But I think it's happening more now because you're seeing a younger generation emerging, not here, but there in the Philippines, coming here,
Right.
up with family or not, just linking up with the people in tech or people in politics. And I think it's a new generation and it's a new day. And I don't think they're bothered by Marcos to the same degree that people who lived through it
I
are.
think I think you're absolutely right. And
I
let's
think
let's see
that's
what happens. He has a real opportunity here to do good stuff, and he might be able to do that. Despite all of the issues that we have with continuing corruption and all the rest.
well. So
So
what happens to the people who are related to Roses and people related to other people who were victimized by Marcos?
you don't want to mention some of our friends that are locals
Well,
that
I
are
can
very well known.
I know I can mention people like the late Bullet Marasigan. I
Right.
mean, Bullet was she died here, but she was an activist there. I mean,
Very much so, yeah.
there are a lot of people. There's a big thing at the public library this weekend in San Francisco, a discussion about the Marcos years. But I mean, can there be any? I mean, it was almost sad to see Marcos Jr. Get inaugurated, and the protesters were they weren't silenced; they were just ignored, and it's just a shame that the world kind of ignored it too, and that kind of it just shows that we're not going to get. I mean, the chances for justice pretty slim.
Yeah. You mean justice based on the harm that was done 50
To
years
them,
ago and 50,
yeah,
40, and 50 years ago?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still trying to get the monies that the family looted. They're still trying to get, but who knows the fate of those efforts now that the guy in charge is related to the guy who plundered, and he probably benefited from the plundering too.
Yeah. So that event is going to be this weekend in
At
San Francisco.
the public library, yeah. Uh, Edwin Button Buckle.
Oh,
And
Button Baka.
Edwin is leading the charge, I believe, and it's going to be at the correct or
Yeah,
correct auditorium.
usual.
Yeah, I don't know what time, but it's a good discussion, and I hope that people. I think it's going to be fed live on Facebook if you can't be there in person. So
Yeah,
I'll put a link on my
yeah,
emilguillermo.me
that would be helpful.
on Facebook. But I'm concerned
Is it
about
is
this.
it going to be Saturday or Sunday? Do you know?
I've got to check. I think it's going to be,
Okay.
but it might be Sunday. But it's this weekend. Now, here's the thing. I'm a little concerned that you asked, is it time for people of a certain age, our age, I guess, people who lived it, to write about what happened, to write about, what really went on during martial law? Because I think we've been trying, but I think, yes, it's time. But uh, there is this sentiment that we're fighting that
Right.
says, right, that says, Marcos, not that bad. Sonny Boy, try it.
Let it go.
Right.
That's very culturally Filipino. I think
Yeah,
that's let it go.
let it go. It's like Frozen.
Babayan, babayan mo.
Yeah. And Frozen, the guy who wrote that, Filipino American, Reyes, I believe. Robert, I think it's Robert, the composer of Frozen. I think he's an EGOT too.
I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
actually
It's
because he's done a lot of work across the board.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that idea of let it go is almost like it's sad. We can't let it go. Mr.
Well,
Historian,
you shouldn't let it go. That's the whole thing. You shouldn't let it go. You got to. In order to have a mature culture in society, you have to be able to confront the reality of your history. Okay, you got to accept the good with the bad. You got to develop a critical perspective on your own history. It's as individuals, right? How would all individuals turn out if all they did was have a positivist perspective on their entire life and not be self-critical?
we'd be Pollyanna.
at,
We,
at best,
yeah, we'd,
you might be able to turn orange and run for president.
we'd be happy all the time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. You like
Wait,
that? I love that orange Jesus statement.
yeah. I
Really,
when
that
you
was so cool. But
when you said orange Jesus, it took me a while to get it, but I got it because he's sort of cult like, and I want to talk about him in a sec, but I want to wrap up on 50 years after.
yeah, so
I do.
we need to educate people honestly. I think this event at the public library. I'm surprised that I didn't get any notices on it, but
I'll,
on Facebook
I'll,
or something. But
I'll
um,
send you a link. I'll send you a link.
yeah, yeah, because I was looking for events. Yesterday and earlier this morning, I was looking for events, and I was wondering why there weren't more. given the fact that Bong Bong is here, right? And that he's making all these connections at the UN and with the White House.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I didn't realize that he was here until I saw my connection out in New York send me the picture. It's sad, but it shows that I thought there would be a major protest, and it was only just a
Yeah,
maliit protest.
Malay.
It was so maliit, it was mabagsit. It was not a good protest.
That's Ilocano, man. You gotta watch out.
I was, it's Marcus's language.
Oh, that's true.
It,
Well, but Malay is Tagalog. Or,
yeah, yeah.
well,
I know the ma words. I know the ma words.
yeah, there are a lot of ma words. Ma is a
Ma,
lexical morpheme,
yeah.
as you say.
Maliit, matigas,
You
matigas,
better
ma,
put that one in perspective.
matigas ng
Hey,
ulo.
no, keep it above the belt, man.
Matigas ng ulo. No,
Oh, hey,
no. Matigas
I
pang,
got to follow up to that one too. So we got to be careful here, man. We're gonna get screened out.
matigas pangulo.
I like that shirt, man. Danger, no filter. I
Oh, yeah.
like it.
I,
Where'd you get that? I need to get one of those. That is so cool. Is that the front or the back?
I think that's the front. I think that's,
Okay, good. Because I don't want to get shot in the back.
yeah.
I want to see it coming. Yeah.
So Dan, yeah, we have to tell this story. That's why we got to honor at least the date. If the
Oh
last
man,
do is just say we honor the date, we remember the times, we remember the things that happened.
I'm surprised that somebody's not doing on this day. From the commitment to martial law on. I'm amazed. Like what
I
brought on martial law was the so-called the alleged bombing attempt.
Yeah,
At a political rally, right?
yeah,
That and I'm forgetting the name of the plaza, but yeah, that's what brought on the declaration of martial law, or at least that was the immediate event, right?
right, right.
And I'm surprised that people haven't been doing an on this day thing. And I just don't. At this point, I got too many small projects going on that are running into each other, so I
Well,
don't have time to do that. But
it's just important to honor history, to remember history, and to know that uh, well, we are we're doing nothing to really try to make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? I mean, we should the 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 reason it's worth knowing is we have a Marcos in office now.
right,
I think as long as we know about the history, it acts as a kind of mitigating tool
yes, it does.
against anyone getting ideas about
That's right. It sets up guardrails, because people will know we're making the comparison between what happened then and what the possibilities are now. That's what we should do with all history, But we can't expect of Filipinos any more than we can expect of Americans, can we? You got Americans who don't want to look at this past several years, not just the Trump years, right?
people who want to go back to January 6th.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't
That,
want to go back just a
that,
year.
it was just creative tourism.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
so while
that's
people are going to jail. Did you see that really light sentence? One guy was remorseful, so he got a really light sentence. But
yep.
I think one of the reasons he got a light sentence because he lost his house and his job. Well, he lost his job and his house. Right?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of guys who are remorseful now because you know the 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 fury came down on them elsewhere. Around the
And why haven't there been any media stories? Is there a documentary in process that's
I don't
going to
know.
be interviewing some of these people who now have changed their perspective?
The big guys, the guys who get 10 years, 7 years, they get covered. And then once you hit a milestone, then they'll say, oh, and so far, several thousand have been charged, and this is the number who've been convicted. And we, of course, we had Wallace Tambo Man, right? The Filipino guy.
Right.
He was given, I think, 55, not 55 months, but he was given a few months. He was given a lesser charge because he entered after, but he did speak some words of remorse when the judge came down on him. A lot of people, I wrote my column in the Inquirer.net on him. So anyway, look, martial law. When you think about strong men, think about Marcos, think about Putin, think about what Donald Trump was trying to evolve into. Fortunately, he was stopped. And he tried to continue on with this big lie, but this is what happens, and Filipino Americans who are aware of this history should know the consequences of,
Well,
corrupt.
that could happen here, but it it happened in the Philippines under rather odd circumstances. His exile and all that stuff after the so-called EDSA revolution.
Yeah.
But I remember getting phone calls and emails from some of my Latino friends who come from countries that had real revolutions,
Mhm.
and all they said was, "You call that a revolution?"
It was a peaceful revolution.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was it, peaceful.
the thing about the end of the revolution, that was the thing about people power, that it was nonviolent, and in a
Right.
way, it almost was. I don't want to say it was a curse. It was a good thing, but it made it possible for Cory Aquino to almost go inward and spiritual, and y- you
Yeah, but
know,
they had a 2/3 centrist and right conservative cabinet
yeah.
and ministry, and 1/3 leftist liberal to radical, and
So
that got wiped out within the first 9 months.
couldn't get anything.
The last guy was, God, I'm forgetting his name. Joker Arroyo. He
Yeah.
was the last guy to get booted out of that, out of that cabinet. So
So it was really back to a more benign status quo.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I should write that story. One of the Aquino sisters
Jesse.
invited me to speak. Yeah, and to explain to everybody. This was when people were really. It was around 84, 85. The Nino Aquino movement was just going to get started.
Yeah.
Which was established, of course, here in San Francisco. I think most people don't know that, but the and so Tess, I think Aquino,
It's
invited me to
Jesse
speak.
Oretta, right?
Yeah, at her
Yeah.
home down in Westboro, of course.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't know there was going to be a big crowd. I thought it was just going to be a small group of people, but man, it was at least 100 people, maybe more.
Yeah.
And I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And she said, "The isms." So I went down there to talk about all of the different political groups, and the ones that obviously had some sort of effect, whether it was kind of geo-centered, right, regional,
Yeah.
or whether it was national. And I went through all of the isms, and uh, people said, "Well, he's being accused of fascism, so you got to talk about fascism." And during a break, people challenged me and said, "Well, it's not fascism." I said, "Well, what is it? What do you think it is?" And they said, "He's just a thief. He's not a fascist. He's just a thief."
He wasn't ideological. He was just a bad man.
He was just taking other people's stuff.
Yeah.
That was it. And what I said to that gentleman? I said, "Well, if that's your perspective on the political structure of the Philippines and how Mr. Marcos has advantaged himself of it, right? I hope that there are far more people that don't think like you," is what I said, because there's not much hope for change in the Philippines if
What
that's
else?
what people see.
Yeah.
He was saying things like, "Genius talaga." genius, Marcos, and I was going, I put my fingers to his head, putting
Yeah.
the shape of a of a gun, and I said, "How much genius does it take to do this?"
Yeah.
Right?
Well, look, this is the same thing with people and Trump, right? The people who find themselves backing Trump. Well, at least he's not ideological. We know that. He's just in.
He's idiot logical.
Well, he is. He's ideological, and
Idiot logical, man. You got to put a T in there, bro.
but people, I think people are coming. Look, we'll talk about Trump in a bit. Uh,
Okay.
look, so
Okay, we're trying to get off of martial law, and it's like getting late in the day, dude.
I know. So
But it's
we
an important topic. The effects. You're right that it's easy to reinstall martial law because the presidential powers that were expanded after that concon while Marcos was still president. And remember when he was wearing two hats at the same time? Are they going to go parliamentary? So he's going to be prime minister and president. You remember that?
yeah.
And I said, well, if you wear two hats, you need to have two heads. Where's he going to put the other hat? But anyway,
Oh, well, Dan. All right, so let's put a cap on martial law there.
please. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's possible to happen again. The president already has the powers. That hasn't changed. There
yeah,
have been the only restriction. Oh, the only restriction was to change to 6 years and you're out, right?
yeah,
6 years and you're out. And now there's a bill coming out of, I think it's either Pangasinan or Pampanga.
to be president for life.
No, no, it's to expand it to two terms, 5 years each.
Oh,
The possibility of reelection.
no,
Okay.
10 years then.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the representative that is proposing that is a Gonzalez, and it's
Oh,
spelled the same way as mine. Yeah, I'm just hoping. I'm hoping
all
I'm not
right,
related, but he is in the neighboring. My family's concentrated in Tarlac, but he is in the neighboring uh, province, and there are members of our family in that area too.
yeah. All right. So Dan, let's we put a cap on martial law here for now. But before I get on to some other topics, Hurricane Fiona went through Puerto
Oh,
Rico,
again,
the Caribbean,
yeah,
and
yeah.
here's the thing: when you talk about Puerto Rico, did they get the short end of the stick after the Spanish American War? Because the Philippines was sold by Spain to the US and was allowed to go free. It was a colony, but it was allowed to go free. Was Puerto Rico kept as a colony because they were closer and maybe seen as more valuable, or because it just seems like they get the short end when it comes to these hurricanes? That's
They
exposed.
don't get treated like Americans. They don't get. They're not Americans. They're treated as though there's some foreign element that are not worthy of the same kind of concern. But at the same time, look what happened after Katrina.
Yeah,
What about the huge number of African Americans that were suffering,
yeah.
and during that Bush, Junior, his time in office,
Well,
it was really awful. So
Biden was speaking to some Puerto Ricans today, saying he's not going to forget them. But I mean, this is something about Puerto Rico that no one really talks about. They talk about Jennifer Lopez. They talk about
yeah,
they talk about A Rod. They
yeah,
talk about Puerto Rican stars, but they don't talk about, oh, Puerto Rico is a colony. They're
right.
second class citizens. They don't really have representation, although I mean they don't really have a vote. They can vote, I think. No,
I can't. They can vote. Yeah,
I mean they have a representative
they do have a representative, but so what? I mean, it's like you know,
like DC.
yeah. So big deal. I mean, so they. It's like saying, okay, we heard. We heard them. We have somebody that's able to tell us what's going on. But a lot of those people were apologists for U.S. policy in Puerto Rico, right? So,
Yeah. Well,
so
this is the thing. Either you say demand Puerto Rico become the 51st state, or you demand that Puerto Rico be independent.
well, what happened to the independence movement, though? I mean, they they released some people that were Puerto Rican independence revolutionaries, right? Just a few years back.
Yeah.
And people are unfamiliar completely with what the 1950s rebellion, and that preceded uh, Castro
Yeah.
in Cuba.
So,
But obviously it's related, right? There's a lot of politics going on in Central and South America at the time. It was the post-war era. I refer to that period as RPM, revolutions per minute, right? Because they were going on all over the world.
right. Well, but what is the answer for Puerto Rico? Because clearly infrastructure subpar. Clearly, the United States not doing enough for its colony. In some ways, the Filipinos should look at what happened to it, to the Philippines, and say, "Well, thank goodness we were a colony." But as soon as we could, 1934, get
Yeah, but
the
that was because of the Depression. They wanted to jettison any liabilities. So
yeah,
that there were two things that were in favor of eventual Philippine independence, right? Because it was a 10-year project, right?
yeah,
That started in 34. It was supposed to end in 44, but the World War II got in the way, right? So it went another year. But uh, the two reasons were they wanted to jettison liabilities because it was the Great Depression, right, and economic liabilities, and the other one was racism.
yeah.
You
Right.
know, they were California. The news all over the country was of Filipinos and their relationships with white women. With the two um, uh,
Taking take
cases,
yeah, taking jobs and taking women.
right?
Classic
Well,
example.
and I ask my students when we cover this period, I ask my students which one do you think provokes violence more readily?
Well, you can take my 10 cents an hour job, but you take my 10 cents an hour girl.
God,
Oh, they
that's
were 10,
terrible.
they were 10 cents an hour though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
The taxi dancers.
Yes, this
They
is true.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Dime a dance, a dime a
I'm a
dance.
dance. Well, I mean, but I just want to know what happened. I mean, the Philippines ultimately became independent and on its own until, and then things got worse with Marcos, perhaps, and when he took power in the
Well, they
in,
were independent titularly, right? Because
yeah,
they were still tied to the American economy. So
right,
it was still the same kind of trade relationship, and there was a slow phasing in, right, of tariffs,
yeah,
and a lowering of um, the special treatment, right?
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
what I'm trying to get at though is what happened to that passion and fervor in Puerto Rico? Is there still a Puerto Rican independence movement? And because it seems like that may be the only way out if they're going to survive as a country. I mean, because they're not surviving as a colony.
right, right. No, I don't know. One of the people that is my closest informant. I should get in contact with her partner though, who is a professor in Puerto Rico. Um, but she's here temporarily anyway, working for some job in Marin County. But
Yeah. Well, like
it's
I,
not. You know what wiped out the this whole series of storms
mm,
really wiped out a lot of the activist population
oh yeah,
because of like many um, rebellions and revolutions. There's an intellectual element of the society, an educated element of the society that starts writing about it and starts talking about it and starts creating media, whether it be underground media or surface media, and that's lacking right now. That's not happening because a lot of the people have come to the U.S. or gone elsewhere, okay, to get gainful employment and they don't go back. A lot of times they don't go back. You know?
Yeah. Well, this is what I was trying to get at. That when you talk about Puerto Rico and how it's fared, through Fiona, through all the storms as a colony, we are still talking about colonization,
That's right. That's
and
right.
colonization has it was with us in the Philippines in the 16th century. It was with us in the Philippines in the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, even the 20th century. We should know it. We know how evil it is, how terrible it could be, and we see that in the you know among the countries that were involved in the Spanish American War, the Philippines may have gotten lucky, whereas Puerto Rico, you know, Cuba has a mixed. I mean, they're an independent.
Well, see, one of the reasons the Philippines, as you put it, got lucky was its geo uh, political position.
Yeah,
Literally,
we're too
literally
far.
military. No, no, not just that. It was a military base.
Oh yeah,
Don't forget the two biggest bases.
right.
Outside the United States was Subic Bay.
And Clark.
A naval base in Clark Field. That's right, Clark Air Base.
Yeah,
Boy, I'm showing my age when I say Clark Field. Oh man,
yeah.
uh,
Well, look,
Second World War
I just, this the idea of colonialism
and neocolonialism.
and neocolonialism. Yeah, I mean, it's still with us, and
Absolutely.
I feel for the Puerto Ricans who have to deal with the aftermath of Fiona. I didn't talk about it much as the storm hit. I didn't really talk about it much, but it hit me today as Fiona went back and forth from being a tropical storm to a hurricane and
Yeah.
through Turks and Caicos and Bahamas, and now it's
Right.
up
Yeah.
toward Maine, and we don't hear anything about poor Puerto Rico. But it's um, it's
Yeah.
a sad,
Well, there's another one coming. It's not gonna hit Cuba or Puerto Rico, but yeah, it's going to hit Florida.
oh yeah,
So
well,
yeah, I think it's going to grace the northern section of Cuba, and then it hooks a right turn and hits the inside coast, the west coast of Florida. But that one travels right up the Atlantic coast. So that's
oh,
going to be very interesting. At least that's the projection.
the Americas.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It,
So
so
let's
Puerto Rico, to close off on Puerto Rico, I think the more apt comparison is Hawaii.
oh yeah,
You
Hawaii.
know,
So
Hawaii. Uh,
it should. So what you're saying is it should be the 51st state.
yeah, yeah. I think they would do a lot better if they went 51st state and they got both the senators and people are starting to rethink the Senate now too. you
Yeah,
know,
well, maybe
but
we can start annexing our colonies, make them states, and then add them to the Senate.
yeah, that's right.
Use that.
Yeah, but see, they have a dwindling population because of all these problems they've been having, and that means that they'll have small representation right in the lower house, but at least
They'll have the
they'll be able
Senate.
to.
They'll have the
There'll be a clear, they'll participate in the census, and the census will actually mean something,
yeah.
in terms of their ability to claim economic support and participation, full economic participation. There's
Okay.
a lot there in Puerto Rico, right? But
Oh,
they need to. I don't think they could develop the kind of tourism that Hawaii does because Hawaii benefits from the east coast of Asia, right? You got all of those different nations vacationing in Hawaii, and that's if they want to go cheap, they go to the Philippines,
right, right.
right? But I remember the last time we were in the Philippines, I was seeing a whole lot of Korean tourists, especially in the beach areas in the Visayas.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
And beach areas in Marcosville too, in Ilocos.
it's starting there. It's starting. Well, it started about 20 years ago. Actually, it started getting more serious development. And
Okay. All right.
okay, so
We're putting a cap
that's it for Puerto Rico.
and so
Yeah, I do have Puerto Rican relative, but I don't think he had kids.
Oh, okay.
But his mother was Puerto Rican. I have one of my father's cousins of he would call him an uncle, I guess, because he's one generation up.
Mm.
Married a beautiful Puerto Rican woman who looked mestiza
Jennifer.
black. Right,
Jennifer was her name.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway,
So
moving on.
last topic. Last topic. We're gonna like bunch all the Trump stuff, the Trump legal problems.
It's
In
easy to
one,
do. It's easy to do because they're all hitting at the same time from
yeah.
different
Well,
places, right?
we've got we got Judge Cannon and the Mar-a-Lago documents, and then we have the 11th Circuit ruling that the DOJ can.
She needs to be subjected, by the way, Cannon,
Yeah.
to review, to an immediate review. You know, not by the federal judiciary.
Now you're a lawyer, or
Yeah.
and so and
No,
Judge
I'm
Cannon.
not a practicing attorney.
Okay, but
I have a degree in law.
Judge Cannon has a degree in law. I believe she went to Duke.
Yeah.
She's from Columbia, and I think she believes in a certain fealty to those who appoint her. She said that Trump should
You
have
mean Columbia University, right? You don't mean the
no.
nation of Columbia.
I mean the nation of Columbia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why she looks like that.
Oh yeah, she's Colombian, and so uh, the question with her is she has this sense of fealty to the dance with the one who brung you, and she said, well,
That ain't judge material, dude.
yeah, well, that was my feeling too when I started seeing her ruling, but the 11th Circuit and it included Trump judges and an Obama judge, the three judge
Yeah,
panel.
there's 2 to 1. Yeah, there was two Trumpers.
Yeah, they ruled in favor
The
of the
DOJ
justice, and so we should be back on track. They could, try to
continued
appeal.
the investigation, the criminal investigation, which is the
Yeah,
most important element.
and I was reading part of the ruling,
Hmm.
and it really just takes Judge Cannon kind of apart, and also it just shows that the law is pretty clear.
Yeah,
These are classified or they're not. If you have them, that's against the law. If
it
you
doesn't matter if it's classified. He was in possession of stuff
right,
that he had no right to. That's what it comes down to,
right, and it wasn't personal. Uh,
right?
There's no personal reason to have these documents.
Well, no, he said there were clothes and stuff in there.
Yeah. So,
He said there were clothes and photographs and all kinds of other stuff that was personal. That's what he said was in there, dude.
also the classified, non-classified. I just classify them by in my head. It's like saying the Our Father.
I declassify. Yeah,
The
if I
act,
caught it,
yeah, the active,
it's no longer classified.
yeah,
Yeah,
saying active contrition.
yeah. It reminds me of Johnny Carson and Karnak. Remember
Yeah.
the Karnak?
Oh yeah, bless you, Father. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay, so that's one action.
so do
Okay.
you? I,
Then he's got Southern District of New York action, right?
right,
He's got the Attorney General of New York action. He's
right,
got Georgia action going on, right?
and the
And
and
yeah,
the January 6th.
right, and January 6th. So,
So,
it's kind of a fun thing.
well, tell me. All right, so go back to the first action with the Mar-a-Lago.
DOJ versus Mar-a-Lago.
If he gets indicted, does he
And
get
Mr. Cohen calls it Mar-a-Lardo. That's really cool. Yeah.
does he get indicted? And if he gets indicted, I've been asking this to Republicans. If he gets indicted, do people vote for him?
Oh, they'll vote for him anyway.
Yeah.
I think there's an element that's going to vote for him anyway. People keep skipping around. Is it 15%? Is it 25%? Is it 30% of the voting populace that's going to still support him? And my position is it may not be 30%, but I'd say 20% for sure. They're still going to vote for him. Look,
There,
when
yeah,
Richard Nixon left office,
yeah,
he did it voluntarily. He was never subjected to impeachment process the way this guy was.
yeah.
And so you could understand that people were saying, we think that he was a good a good president, and he was wrongly persecuted and he forced out of office. Okay, this guy has done so many things wrong on so many levels, right? And 90% of the time, you can't even extend fact to his
Yeah.
statements.
All right.
Okay,
Uh,
and then they're still going to stick by him.
so
That's
Dan,
that's
does,
really dangerous.
does he get indicted?
I think so. I think um, it would really be bad precedent from a legal point of view if given the kind of evidence that I think will come up, not only from because we're only looking at the Mar-a-Lago thing right now. I
Right.
mean, when the DOJ, now they're playing keep away in bi-directional keep away, right? The January 6th committee is saying, okay, yeah, we got all this information, but we're not quite ready to share it completely with DOJ yet.
Mhm.
But we would like to know what the potential strategy is that the DOJ is taking in relationship to the possibility of an indictment, right? So they're both sides are playing this game. Well, I think that's a smokescreen. I think underneath they're sharing.
Yeah, oh,
Okay.
yeah, I think they are too.
Yeah.
I think they have to indict.
Yeah.
I think someone, if they, all they need is one.
Right.
All, they don't need a quadruple indictment here or a
Right.
quadruple indictment. Just one indictment is all they need. And if on the Espionage Act, you know,
Yeah.
he's got the papers he should have. There was obstruction, criminality there. There's enough criminality.
Yeah, well, Steve, but they're gonna, what the defense is gonna be is, but there's no harm. They've never proven any harm. So he had all of this stuff. That's like a status offense. He had all of this stuff. He broke the law, but there's no harm. They haven't proven that he did anything with it, that he benefited from it personally, or that he traded any information with adversaries of the United States and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so
victimless, victimless.
victimless crime. Okay, so the one that will definitely go down, take him down, is obstruction.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the one because he had the stuff. He lied twice,
yeah.
twice, and he's got a bunch of lawyers who lied for him. They filed stuff with the court. That's disbarment, man. When you put stuff in front of the court and it's not true, so they're now. The joke is MAGA. MAGA stands for makes attorneys get attorneys. You know, I like that. I think that's true. All of these people got to lawyer up.
Yeah.
Got to
Well,
lawyer up.
so I think I all right. So that's Mar-a-Lago. That looks like the case. But now the New York AG case.
Mhm.
We'll talk about January 6th next week because they're meeting again.
That's
And we'll
right.
talk about Georgia.
September 28th. Yeah.
And we'll talk about Georgia down the line. But the AG, I thought, made an excellent presentation.
Yep.
Letitia James the other day. We played it on our.
Trump called her a racist.
Oh yeah, because she
Racist.
after
And
what?
then I think it was Eric. I don't know if it was Eric or Don Jr., but he produced that video that shows her saying, "I'm gonna be a real pain in the ass."
Oh yeah, I saw.
While she was running for office, she was campaigning, and she
Yeah,
wasn't holding office yet. And so I said, "So what? Okay, so you're gonna say, oh no, she's really biased. She was always out to get him." I go, and my answer to that is, okay, okay, did you do it? did you do it? Because that's really what it's at. What it's at. Tell me that you didn't do it, and that thing is all trumped up, and
yeah.
it's fake.
Look, I will say this about what I've heard Trump say about this. He said, "Well, this is standard practice. This is what
Yeah, everybody does it,
razors do.
which is freaking true.
Which is true. They overestimate.
Yeah, but they don't do it to the degree that this guy did it.
But Trump also said that uh, everyone got paid back. Everyone. There's no one. No,
Oh,
they all made money off me.
yeah. You remember when he was running, they showed how many cases were brought against him.
yeah.
and that all of the cases that he was bringing against other people were counter complaints,
Yeah.
right? And so it was something like 72 complaints against him shorting people and not paying them.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Look, I just think it's going to be hard to prove that case, especially. I think another real estate attorney said the the attorney general was dealing in cases that were just within a short purview of time when Donald Trump wasn't president, and that may make a difference, in terms of what how she can what it may make a difference in how it's presented to a jury. So I'm not sure if it's a slam dunk case, but
No, it's
the
not a slammer. It's not a slam dunk.
I thought the AG made a good case when she said, look, every time a rich person inflates his sense of wealth, it takes money out of the pool for other people. And that's where the real trickle down
Right.
happens. Money that could go to regular people who really need it versus to elite, rich, wealthy people who overstate their wealth and then suck the money away. That was a good case that she made. And um, I, look, it's
Yeah,
it's
but
a massive law.
I mean, I think what does that do? What is their state? I agree with you. That was a great statement. Okay, but the statement, what it does at best is it makes possible, right, public identification, right,
Yeah,
with with the harm.
yeah,
Okay, with the harm, and that's a good thing.
yeah, oh, yeah,
But
because
there's nothing. But there's no crime in that. There's no crime in that, and it happens all the time. I mean, look at the people who contributed to building the wall. That's the one thing. There's another friend of his buddies is getting prosecuted fully for that,
yeah,
and this time he's going to go to jail. You
yeah.
know,
You're talking about Barrick.
Bannon.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Oh, Ban,
the
Ban.
yeah, yeah,
That,
and
that,
he's still mounting off, man. He's still mounting off. He's still trying to make himself sound like a goddamn
yeah, that was a
martyr.
grifting kind of thing where he used
Yes,
money from donors.
and then he said that I'm going to be fighting for that what they got that was 250 million that those guys were able to collect. That's we know about. But then there was also the several tens of millions that he himself that Trump himself has collected from people who are continuing to contribute. $5 here, $10 there.
See, this is another example of, during the time when Trump was running, people said, oh, we need a businessman. We need a business.
Yeah,
This is why you don't want a businessman, because businessmen think about money, they think about profits.
that's
This
right.
is the fox guarding the hen house. And
That's
this
right.
is what you don't need. You need, because government is about people, not
That's
profit.
right.
And when you start thinking about, oh, I can look, how can I enrich myself? This is such a great
That's
deal.
right.
This is the problem with Trump in the first place. He didn't deserve to be president. He was put up there because people had this feeling that a business person could help solve the deficit. He increased the deficit. Oh, he could help with the spending. You
But the
look,
Republicans increase the deficit every time they're in office.
yeah, I know.
If you look at all of the the budgetary office CBO stuff, right?
Yeah,
Oh, and the history of it all, you see we they increase the deficit every time we go. And remember, it was during Bush II's administration that Cheney said deficits don't matter.
yeah.
Okay.
Cheney the father.
Yeah. Oh yeah, not Liz. Yeah,
Not
not Liz, but
father,
Daddy Cheney. Yeah.
Daddy Cheney. I mean, Liz has her problems too, but at least,
Oh yeah. I mean, she's a diehard Republican.
yeah,
We
right.
disagree with her on most other issues.
But she's
Right.
right on Trump. She's right.
She's right on Trump. She's right on some other issues too. I mean, um, uh,
Probably with slams.
I'm waiting to see what her position is on immigration. But
Ah, and look,
yeah,
immigration. We got to we look. Dan, we
We're
have
out of time.
yeah, we haven't even talked about Ron DeSantis,
Oh, oh God.
but we shall talk. You know, look, that topic isn't going away, and the immigrants have sued. They have some, and right
And
now,
you got a lonely sheriff
yeah, and,
in
well,
Texas that's saying I think is a crime.
a lonely sheriff, and you have Gavin Newsom saying you got to look into kidnapping, you got to look at it RICO law,
Same argument. Yeah, same argument.
and then
It does qualify for kidnapping, by the way.
right, I know. When I first heard it, I said they got to think. You got to think about trafficking. You got to think about There's something going on here
Yep.
that
Yep.
is a legal thing, and these immigrant groups representing 25 migrants, they've sued. They want an injunction.
Right.
They want an injunction in Boston, um, so that no one else anywhere,
Can get shipped out.
yeah,
Yeah.
or other governors anywhere can copy this. And then there's another guy in Florida, a state senator in Florida, who's trying to get an injunction against DeSantis from spending any more money. So this thing isn't going away. So we can talk about that another time.
There's going to be dirt corruption too because of the company that was uh, flying people around.
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah,
I I imagine. Yeah, I mean that Air DeSantis, does not come cheap. I
yeah.
mean,
I can't remember the name of the company. It starts with a V though. It's something like Verto or something like that. But
yeah,
yeah.
it's all right. So we got a lot to talk about next week. I hope you come back next week. But
Yeah, I try to keep my calendar open just for you
oh,
because
thank you. Well, we have fun talking, and I got to talk to you about Carlos Vila too,
okay,
because
okay,
I loved. I mean, I've seen some of his work when he had that Mission District show a few years back
yeah, yeah,
when Theo Gonçalves did his book.
got
Uh,
right.
loved it, loved the show, but I I really loved it at the Asian Art Museum. And if people are close, I don't know how long it goes.
So this October, it ends in October. Comes
Okay,
down in October.
definitely people should see it. I we should have gotten together, but it was like a last minute thing. We happened to be in the city. We were looking for something to
Oh,
do.
that would have been fun, man.
Yeah.
I would even have tolerated a vegan dinner with you guys. You know, I mean,
Oh, well, we went to Greens that night.
oh well, it's nearby. It's right nearby. So
Yeah. So look, all right, rain check. We'll do it again. But
yeah,
we loved the Carlos Vila show, and I know that I didn't know him.
uh,
I never met him, and I feel
you know
bad.
that's kind of I feel odd about that because while you were still in and around the city,
Yeah, I know.
I was working with him on different things.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Carlos Vila is that he was born in '36,
Hmm.
and he represents a generation
Yeah,
before us. I mean, you're
the generation that Fred Cordoba called the forgotten generation, right? And
right. Well,
yeah,
but I feel like less forgotten, but it's that whole generational group, right?
right,
What how long do you go for the boomers?
right,
40s to the late 50s. I mean, some people think if you're on the edge, if you're on the margins of not just the boomers but the millennials and of Generation X,
right, right.
we call those people the tweeners. There's a
The
lot of
tweeners. I do that. I call them tweeners.
yeah, and I feel like I saw that Carlos Vila was 36, and I said that's like my half sister, you know,
Hmm.
in their
Hmm.
80s, right? I mean, they, my father wasn't totally in mothballs, but
Right.
but I mean, I did have a half sister born in that in his era, but then I didn't come until later in the 50s, and we're
Right. Right.
totally different generation. Anyway,
Yeah. Here's the funny thing. When I uh, talk to people of that generation that were born before the war,
yeah,
I still see them as second generation, obviously,
yeah,
but I actually have a lot more in common with them than the next generation, because the next generation, it becomes overwhelmingly immigrant.
Yeah.
It becomes overwhelmingly like almost 70% immigrant.
The people born in America, um, American born, it's
We were
really
eclipsed. We were eclipsed by 1973 or so.
yeah, exactly, and that's why and we were just young when we met. When we first met, me
Yeah,
and
yeah,
uh,
we were.
you have an infamous picture of us.
That was a little later. Yeah, it wasn't when we first met, but it was, yeah.
But
But it was a situation where both of our parents came.
but it,
My
it was
mother was really happy to meet you, man. As usual, she found she as her typical behavior was that everybody else was more important than me. So
no. I it's just that the whole American born thing.
yeah, that's right.
We spent all our lives thinking that we're going to we're going to make something of this Filipino thing.
That's right.
And-
The thing was that the people who voted for us to get those awards
yeah,
were largely first generation. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, first generation post 65 immigrants.
older though.
So yes, but they were a little older. Yeah. And but what I appreciated about them was that they actually recognized and appreciated us for what we were doing, and they didn't have that anti amboy, that anti-American born attitude. Uh,
Boy,
and
boy.
they celebrated us. Oh man, I can't tell you how many times I've been insulted walking into a restaurant and getting ready to order and
Oh,
thinking, "Ang amboy."
boy.
You
Look,
know, thinking,
I know what you mean. And look, boy. Uh,
that's it, man.
yeah. Daniel Phil Gonzalez, professor of ethnic studies, Asian American studies, Asian American politics, Filipino American studies, San Francisco State University, College of Ethnic Studies.
Yeah.
Professor Emeritus,
Emeritus. Emeritus.
emeritus.
It means my abuse of the system is now one way. It's unidirectional. You cannot abuse me further.
Emer- emeritus, emeritus. Not
Emeritus.
not once, but tus.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
So,
know, I wanna attribute the Orange Jesus to somebody that Liz Cheney was citing.
who's that?
She was citing. I don't know, but she was saying that in the midst of the January 6th attack, there were people who were signing off, from her own party, that were signing off on a statement that where the lower house refused to acknowledge that Biden won the election,
Mhm.
and they were signing off on that. And one of the people that, as he signed under his breath, said, "The things we do for this Orange Jesus."
Ah,
She was quoting somebody else, but I thought that was so cool. I mean,
well,
I don't know.
it's a slam on the Christianity side of
On the
things.
one hand,
Yeah, but it's a very apt description of the cult-like power he has on certain parts of.
but it also shows that that member of Congress knows it's fake.
Yeah,
They know it's fake, and so and they're gonna these kinds of people are gonna get reelected.
yeah. Well,
You know,
fakery is that was election deniers. That's their stock and trade. They deny the truth. I don't know, Dan. More
okay,
next week. More
okay,
next
okay,
week.
okay. We're gonna do the Villa thing, which is cool.
All right, Daniel, Phil.
Well, I'll give you some of my favorite Carlos Villa stories, but
Okay. All right, yeah, the Velia thing. Yeah, Dan. Thank you very much again.
hey, it was a pleasure. Nice to be back.
We didn't
Great show. Really a lot of stuff, man.
we
But
didn't talk about Trey Lance.
it's going to get thicker. Yeah, boy. People. When you watch the video, you could see that his ankle is broken, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's at a weird angle. When he's got his knee is up and the foot is up, you can see that it's broken.
Anytime you run a guy like that, it's
Oh
like
yeah, here we go.
I look. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, this is football," but no.
No,
Uh,
that's bullshit.
he
He
was
ran him too many times. Why are you running?
on
You know,
second down multiple
yeah,
times in
yeah,
the first quarter.
yeah.
I,
No,
I mean,
man.
I mean,
No, he's coach has got to eat it, man. I mean,
yeah.
he's got to just admit he screwed up.
No. The coach was trying to grind Trey Lance down to size, and it worked. He got hurt. I mean, you protect your valuable players. You let people sink or swim when they aren't.
That he was running too
I
many
look.
running plays. You know
He's going to
what
admit that,
he was around 70%
but
running plays. I mean, it's crazy.
that's my conspiracy theory on the 40. I can have a conspiracy theory on the 49.
Grind him down. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
What this kid
All right.
needs is a little humiliation and maybe an injury.
Well,
Let him
yeah.
get
So
bell rung a few times.
I mean, look, it solved Shanahan's problems. Solved his problem. I mean,
Yeah, no, he's got a different problem now. He
they
solved
look.
his other problems, but now he's got a different problem. Okay,
Uh,
let's see what happens because Kittle's in
oh,
this week. So yeah,
the 49ers playing this weekend. All right.
all right, dude.
Man, thanks a lot. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Touch.
Signing out.
All
Thank
right.
you.
There's Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my pal. Like I said, Professor Emeritus. He knows a lot of stuff. He's older than me. He is. He knows a lot of stuff. That's why I like Dan. And we can talk about martial law. So I hope you got a little something about martial law. And I will put this up on. I'll put this up on our Emil Amok's Takeout the podcast. I got to do it. I was gonna. I'll start with this one. I really will put this up, and maybe people will listen to it as a podcast as opposed to, oh, let's look at Emil's face. Oh, people don't look. I mean, this is intended to be like a radio show where people can listen as well as watch if they see us on YouTube, on Twitter at Emil Amok, Facebook, facebook.com/Emil Guillermo Media, or on amok.com. You can catch the show live and also repeated. Okay, regular listeners to this show know I like to end with a little meditation. And the meditation is all about love. Okay, I take that back about Kyle Shanahan. He wasn't trying to grind down Trey Lance. He was just trying to solve his own problems. What to do with a quarterback who is underperforming. Run him. Get him out of. No, okay. No. I want to show some love. You got to show some love. You got to show some kindness. Really. I find it helpful. Loving, self compassion. Show it to yourself. But before you do, show it to others. And as you show it to others, hey, it comes back. It does. It really does. So, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Back again next time, Monday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live, right here. Till then, mahal